Hey y'all, let's finally wrap up my March reads. In the thumbnail, you probably noticed that just like February, I only have 2 physical books to show you. And I think there may actually have been another physical book in there, but I checked a couple out of the library this month, so that may be why I don't have it here to show you. But I wanted to very briefly talk about my stats first, and then we will go into the books that I read for March. So my 2023 Goodreads reading challenge is 100 books, and I'm not anywhere close. So we are, technically we're a quarter of the way through the year, so I should be a quarter of the way through my 100 books. So in that regard, yes, I am at my goal. However, according to the weeks, I basically have to read a little less than 2 books per week. So right now where I'm sitting, I have finished 25 books. As of the end of March, I have finished 23 books. And so where I'm sitting today after the first week of April, yes, I have finished 25 books, but I should actually be at 27 right now. So I am about 2 books behind schedule, and that's pretty much where I trend currently. I have been trending, I'll finish one and it'll say, you're 1 book behind for the year. And then I will go a couple of days and start reading another one, and then it'll say, a couple days later, it's like, you're 2 books behind. So I'm pretty much 1 to 2 books behind where I'm supposed to be. That's pretty much where I've been sitting for the last several weeks. I just am, there was a period where I wasn't listening to a whole lot of audiobooks. I also am starting a new job in a week. I'm so excited, but I have no idea what that is going to look like. I will have no commute. I drop my son off at his school, and it's literally across the street from where he goes to school. So I will have no commute. I also don't know how much. I'll be in training for several weeks, so I won't be listening to audiobooks then. And then once I'm finished with training, I don't really know what that's going to look like. So my audiobook usage, it's going to go significantly down. I feel like those are going to be weekend, running errands kind of things, which I do now anyways, but it's pretty much going to exclusively be weekends, errands, while I'm doing chores around the house, things like that. So I don't know. I could fall way behind. I would love to finish 100 books this year, but I should really be way closer to I don't know. I think I read 150 books last year, 154 maybe. So I'm falling way behind. And you'll see that. Last month I only read 6 books. This month I did a little bit better than that, but I do also have a DNF, an official DNF this month. I have experienced where I have I'll get a little bit into an audiobook. I'll read 30 minutes or an hour. I'll listen to an audiobook, and then if it's not capturing my attention, I'll just go, nope, next. And I generally get all of my audiobooks from Libby, so they're free. I don't pay for audiobooks. I've also discovered a couple of channels for audiobooks on YouTube. So I've started listening to some audiobooks on YouTube, and I've gotten pretty selective because the DNF that I have is an audiobook. So we'll talk about that in just a minute. But suffice to say, wow, I feel like I'm rambling. Holy crap. This is what happens when I take too many days off and I don't get in front of the camera that frequently, because then I'm just I forget how to form sentences that are interesting for you to hear. So I'm at 25 books for the year. I have one DNF. It's my very first official DNF ever. Let's talk about what I read in March. I read 2 Book of the Month books. Not only that, but these 2 Book of the Month books, one of them, did they both come in my March box? I think no. Yeah, I think they did both come in my March box. Oh, this one says February. This one doesn't say. Okay, so I've gotten both of these books within the last 60 days, let's say. The first one is Jojo Moyes, Someone Else's Shoes. This one was really cute. It was about 2 women, one of them very well off, one of them very much not so. And they switch gym bags while they're at the gym. And so the basically like average, not average Joe, average Jane, she ends up with like a Chanel coat and some red bottom shoes and, you know, just like very elevated outfit. And so she puts them on and she kind of feels like a badass, you know? And so she feels like she ends up elevating her life, like her wardrobe. And then the other gal, she just goes through a series of kind of unfortunate events, but she ends up going through this like really terrible situation and is basically brought down to like commoner status, if you will. It's really cute. I did enjoy the kind of character arc for each of the characters. I really enjoyed watching this woman who is, you know, just kind of average, but she was putting in all this work with her family and putting in all this work at her job, and she just wasn't really appreciated, which, okay, yes, that's a little bit of, you know, art imitating life for a lot of women. But she ended up, you know, really wanting to be appreciated and standing up for herself. And, you know, so I really enjoyed that character arc. And I always struggle with, like, you know, the kind of like the princess that falls down to the commoner status kind of a thing. You know, the wealthy gal is not a princess, but it kind of has that same feel to it. But I did feel like there was some character development there. I enjoyed her arc a little bit less, but, you know, it was still, she had a little bit of a redemption story. So that was nice to see. And so I really did enjoy this. I gave this one 4 stars. The other book of the month, oh my God, okay. It's been warm here, and so we've had our doors open during the day, and there are flies in my house now, and that makes me absolutely crazy. So there's one that like will not leave me alone, so I'm sure you're gonna see it. So we're not dirty people, we just left the door open for too long. The next book of the month book that I read this month was Pineapple Street. This was again about a story about family, about siblings in particular. We followed a little bit of the 2 sets of secondary siblings, but really primarily we were following one of the siblings who was single, and she was, I think, 30 or maybe coming up on 30 or something. And she was kind of like a spoiled little rich girl, had a job at a nonprofit, but didn't really have to work, you know, made plenty of money off of her trust fund. And so we follow mostly her and some of the choices that she makes, and basically how she decides to kind of give her life some meaning. She took too many drugs, she drank too much, and she just partied too much. And then she one day decides that, you know, she's got to make something of herself. And I gotta be honest, I didn't love this character. I mean, like, it's not that much of a difference between these 2, you know, primary characters. The spoiled girl in this one, you know, the wealthy wife in this one, and the spoiled little rich girl sibling in this one. I guess they're kind of similar, but like, I didn't like her in this one. And I've heard somebody say, it's a booktuber that I follow, and I can't remember who it is, but she says, you know, they don't have to necessarily be a good person, but like, I want to root for them. And like, I just didn't feel that for her. This one, I think I gave 3 stars. The writing was good. I did feel like it was representative of the culture of the Upper East Side of, you know, New York. And so I felt like it was accurate, but I didn't love the main. I would have appreciated following more of the story arcs of the 2 secondary siblings rather than the primary sibling that we kind of were following primarily. Yeah, I didn't like her as much as I liked the other 2. Let's get the DNF out of the way. The DNF is an audiobook. As I mentioned, I've been listening to some audiobooks on YouTube, which didn't even know that was a thing, but there were some that were recommended to me. And so I've been listening to primarily romances on YouTube, and a romance to me is like dessert. You know, you want to feel good, and it's nice to have, but pretty much completely unnecessary. I want, in a romance, I want to root for the main character. I want a freaking happy ending. And I want to have a good time while I'm reading it or listening to it. And that was not my experience when I was listening to this audiobook. So the audiobook that I'm talking about is called The Many Dates of Indigo, and it's by Amber D. Samuel. I did not like the main character at all.
After you're done with this, can we go to the store and buy some sandwich drink?
We'll see, baby.
I want yellow and pink and red.
We'll see. Go back outside with Dad, okay?
Okay.
Okay. None of that was my experience with this book. I did not have a good time listening to it. I definitely was not rooting for the main character. And I can't even say that I got my happy ending because I only made it 2.5 hours through a 9-hour audiobook. I absolutely did not like the main character. I didn't feel... She was incredibly, like, full of herself and very high and mighty. And there were a couple of instances where she very clearly did something wrong and suffered the consequences of that. And, like, totally gaslit the other person and was like, well, you don't know who I am. Well, who the fuck cares? Who cares who you are? It was so annoying to me and incredibly frustrating, and I cannot stand for someone to think of themselves so high and mighty. Like, have a little humility, you know? I did not like that character at all. And the other thing was, I had a real problem with the narration. So it was being narrated by a woman, which is fine, because our main character is a woman, but she was absolutely terrible at the male voices. One of the male characters, in the author's description of him, it said he had a very deep voice. And so she would talk like this every time she was portraying his character. I can't do it. It like completely pulled me out of the narrative every single time. It was so frustrating. And sometimes that's excusable, but like the writing itself was not great. One of the siblings is like a chef or a baker or something, and so she would go into these incredibly descriptive details about like guacamole, you know, and like how thick it was and how, you know, and I was like, is this a euphemism for something? What are we doing here? You know, like she would be so descriptive in some things and then like just gloss over other details that I felt like could have, you know, like could have been developed a little bit more, that would have been more pertinent to the story than like how he dipped the chip in the bowl and it broke off because the guacamole was so thick. You know what I mean? Like, I just didn't love it. My goal is not to tear anyone down, but my goal is to be very honest and very candid about what I'm reading and what I'm feeling. So there you go. I feel like now would actually be a great time to talk about something that I loved this month. And that is that I discovered, I think in February, I discovered Karen Slaughter, who is a tremendous thriller writer. So in February, I listened to an audiobook of hers called Pieces of Her. And I'll try to remember to link my February wrap up because that one was so good. I enjoyed it so much, but that was my intro to Karen Slaughter. She has been writing stories about basically people who live in and around the state of Georgia for like 20 something years. And I have just now found her. It literally was something that came up as just available I was looking for available audiobooks through Libby. I've mentioned before I live in a small town, so my library selection is very small on Libby, but Pieces of Her came up in February, and so I listened to it, thought it was tremendous, so then I decided to seek her out. And so in the month of March, so in February I read one of her books, or I listened to one of her audiobooks. In the month of March, I read 4 more. So let me see. So I listened to The Silent Wife, which after I listened to it, I discovered that was actually number 10 in a series of, I think it's like 12 now, or it's going to be 12 or something like that. But that is part of the Will Trent series that Karen Slaughter writes.
Just one more thing.
So after I listened to book 10 in the Will Trent series, I decided that I was going to go back to the beginning of Will Trent and listen to them and or read them all in order. But before I did that, some of the characters in the Will Trent series are carryovers from her Grant County series, and so I really want to start with Grant County. So I have that one from I have Grant County on loan from my library, which I will be talking about in April. And so yeah, so there's going to be lots more Karen Slaughter coming up. But in the month of March, I did read The Silent Wife, which was Will Trent number 10. And then while I was waiting for my hold on Grant County to come in, I also read Will Trent number 1, which is called Triptych. So those were two of the Karen Slaughter books that I read in the month of March. Triptych I read on my Kindle, and then so that was one ebook that I read for the month. I also listened to what is it called? Hang on. I listened to 2 more standalones by Karen Slaughter as well. One of them is called False Witness, and one of them is called Coptown. So in False Witness, in False Witness, we are following an attorney. She's a criminal defense attorney, and she is hired to defend a man who basically is a sexual predator, and they know each other from their past. And so she basically is kind of coerced into doing whatever it is that he wants her to do in like trying to manipulate a jury and trying to win this case, because otherwise he's going to expose her past. And so that one was really, really good. By the way, I've given all of my Karen Slaughter books so far 5 stars. Phenomenal. And then, so that was False Witness. And then Cop Town was another standalone that I read by her, or I listened to on audio. And in that one, we follow a part of the, I think it was the Atlanta Police Department, or maybe it was a town outside of Atlanta. But there is a cop killer on the loose. And so somebody is, just like picking off these cops one by one. And the book opens with two partners. One of them is carrying the other one because he has gotten shot. And so I think there like 5 cops have gotten killed, and so there is this happens all back in the 70s. So there's a segregated police force. There are women on the force, but they are not treated well, and they're not treated equally like they're valued. And so some of the women on the force are actually the ones that are kind of doing the digging and looking into everything and kind of putting the clues all together and stuff. It's a really cool story. I love how they took not only the women that were part of the force in the 70s, but they also had, so there were all of the men that were kind of treated equally, but then there was like the women's side of the force, and then there were the black women's side of the force. And so there were really almost like 3 segregated police forces back in the 70s. And so it really showed how all of the women were treated, and it wasn't nicely, but how integral they were in, catching big criminals and, really solving some of these important cases. So that was really, really cool. I really liked the way that one turned out. It was I just really liked that one. So that was Cop Town. That was another 5 stars. And then I needed something a little bit lighter. So I ended up listening to... Oh, hang on. My kid wants to come inside. Okay. As I was saying, after I listened to all of those, I needed something a little bit lighter. So I went back to listening to romance books, and I listened to 2 more. The first one was called 99% Mine. This was written by Sally Thorne. She is also the author of The Hating Game. And I have an unpopular opinion. I really didn't like The Hating Game. I listened to it on audio. And I am an absolute firm believer that narration can kill an audiobook. I did not like the narrator of, what's her name, Lucy, in The Hating Game. Couldn't stand her. She was like kind of snotty and snarky, and like I didn't like her voice. I didn't like her tone. So I was never rooting for her. I never was rooting for her. And as we've already explained, I want to be able to root for our main character particularly in a romance. But I just didn't like The Hating Game. I know that's an incredibly unpopular opinion, but I decided to give her another try. I listened to 99% Mine. Is that what it's called? 99% Mine, also by Sally Thorne. I hated this book. I finished it. It wasn't a DNF like that other one was that I was telling you about. I finished it, but like super predictable. Like this was only ever going to end one way. And I just didn't like it. It was like, so we follow this girl. I don't even remember her name. Don't care. But she had this inheritance, and she inherited this house from her grandmother, and they hired with her twin brother. So they hired their friend who was a GC to come and fix it all up, and so they could sell it and make a huge profit. And then she was going to take off and travel the world. Never had a real job, didn't care to have a real job. You know, she had plenty of money. Another trust fund baby. She just was going to go off and do her thing. Couldn't wait to leave town. But the entire book was about her fighting with her twin brother over who the best friend belonged to. That's where the whole 99% mine comes from. She always felt like it was her brother's friend, and that she was having to like steal time from him and steal the friendship. And she always said like, oh, he's only 1% mine. He's 99% everyone else's. And that was just a huge ick factor to me. I didn't love the premise, but I thought, okay, let's just see where this goes. You know, she was a terrible person. She was incredibly immature. And again, I just wasn't rooting for her. This is now 2 in a row where I basically hate the female leads that Sally Thorne writes. So she is a do not read from author for me. Again, terribly unpopular opinion, but I just don't like her characters. I can't root for them, and they make terrible decisions, and they're super immature. So I don't think I'm her target audience. However, the last audiobook that I listened to was another incredibly popular one. I listened to Dating Dr. Dill, and this one was fantastic. This is what I was hoping for from all of these other audiobooks that I had listened to this month. The book opens with our main protagonist, Karina, on her 30th birthday. And so she is part of a very large East Asian family and not married at the age of 30. So of course, you know, they look at her like she's an old maid. Not only that, she has a younger sister who is not only engaged to be married, but also she's an influencer. So everything is about, you know, her followers and how she can make money from whatever it is that she's doing. And so she goes on this talk show, the Dr. Dill show, and Karina, the sister, has had one like steamy night with Dr. Dill, but she doesn't know that it's him until she accompanies her sister to the studio. And then, you know, of course, chaos ensues, and it just is, it's kind of like a strangers to enemies to lovers. It's like one night stand to enemies to lovers, kind of, sorta. But it was so good. It was like the perfect amount of spice. It does get a little bit steamy in some spots, but just, I felt like it was so authentic and just so different than the couple of failed, like really terrible romance books that I had read earlier in the month. And I was rooting for, I think here's the thing. I think I love an underdog. I love an underdog. So when someone comes out of the gate and they're all high and mighty, and, you know, they just think like they're it, and some man will have to like work and win them and whatever, like, yeah, that's all well and good and healthy to a degree, but like, you are fallible, and a little humility goes a long way, honey. So I love the like every person character, you know, just like an average person who just finds someone who is good and true and makes them happy, and you know, like, it's just a good match. That's the kind of story that I like. So I really, really loved this one, Dating Dr. Dill. It was just so refreshing to me. And like I said, I felt like very authentic, and just like made me feel really good at the end. So this one I really, really enjoyed. And it was a very nice change from the others that I had listened to this month. So that was a heck of a journey. I know I have been here, there, and everywhere. The boys are outside, my husband and my son. They're working on the truck. And I swear to you, each of them have come in about 15 times in the middle of me trying to film all of this. So yes, I have been distracted. Yes, I have had to stop about 74 times in the middle of this. I've had to find screwdrivers and scissors and toys and a camera, and I just wanted to sit down. And not only that, but I've literally been trying to film this video for like a week. So I'm so sorry that it's late. I hope that I'm able to scramble something together from these bits and pieces of clips that I have tried to film in between all of my interruptions. That's that. I will really try to put some quality video together for you, and hopefully you find it somewhat enjoyable. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Let me know okay, here's the deal. I really want to... I have been broadening my horizons, but as I've said before, romance was always kind of like my go-to. That was what got me into reading to begin with. And I would really like to redeem the romance genre. You know, we had a rough month with romance this month, so I would like to redeem the genre. I would love recommendations from you of romance that you really, really enjoyed, so I can, you know, kind of get my mojo back. Leave me a rec down in the comments and let me know what I should read next. I do have my April TBR that I'm slowly working my way through. And I've hopefully got some other videos coming up here for you soon as well. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Check out all my links down below, and I'll talk to you really soon. Bye.